executive and keep that from happening and keep that out-migration of patients from happening, but it continues.
And we have.
Okay.
I think when you look at the fact that we're 3 years old in terms of a corporate entity coming together, I think we've made significant progress in that area. It takes time to build that momentum in the process of trying to consolidate your services and explain to the community who you are and where those services are located. But again, I'll go back to using the example of orthopedics, where not only have we seen an increase overall of our orthopedic business, to the tune of about 30% growth in orthopedics, but we've actually seen people from outside the community traveling in for those procedures. So while overall we do have out-migration, and that's going to continue to be an issue that we address with the community, that is an area that we're focusing on, and specifically around particular service lines.
I think another point to be made about that people forget to make is that out-migration is a function of choice. If you have insurance and you have a vehicle, you can acquire health care anywhere you want. That's quite easy for those of us who have that capacity. But that being said, there are 50,000 people a year who present themselves to the emergency room here in Kingston. And some of those people, in fact, probably many of those people, don't have primary care physicians, have no other resource for medical care. And so when we have all of these intellectual conversations about out-migration and service lines and centers of excellence, there's a percentage of the population that we're really trying very hard to serve who don't really know about centers for excellence, but they know that if they are sick, the only place they have to get care is the emergency room.
Part of the mission, though, right?
That is absolutely part of our mission, and we never, as board members and as administrators, ever forget that. And it's part of what we are really trying to save. We want the best possible care for everyone, those who have the economic wherewithal to acquire it, but also those who present when we are the last resort. We want to give them the best care, and we want to be available to them as well.
Okay. Do we got one up there that we want to ask? Yvonne, any up there coming in?
We had some questions, but I think most of it has been
answered. Let me go, touch on something that did generate quite a bit of comment, which is our lead story in the paper today regarding executive salaries. I speak to it. I don't know how I want you to speak to it. I mean, it's hard for you to defend how much you make, but I do think it's important that the community understand the salary structure, particularly when they see how much money higher paid executives make, and then at the same time are reading about the financial crisis, and particularly when you see the word bonus sometimes showing up within the lines of these salaries. Can you give us a sense of where these salaries stand in terms of competitive institutions? You're the one who's approving them, and you're
right,
the
exactly. And I'm the person here who has to respond to that, and we're just surprised it took you this long to get to it.
No, very organized, except for the live stream.
I want to. I think you should understand that. Obviously, I tried to at least illustrate in the beginning that the executives that are in place at Healthalliance and that we pay do not just run 2 hospitals. They also have the responsibility of the build-out and the opening of Woodland Pond, which is a continuing care retirement community, as well as maintaining and helping to manage Margaretville Hospital and Mountainside. So it's a bigger job than one might automatically assume. There's more than just the 2 entities that we're familiar about here. I also pointed out that we are a not-for-profit, and as a result of being a not-for-profit, as you know, our financial information is available publicly, but our salaries are also under a lot of scrutiny because there are a lot of people who are interested that we not overpay our not-for-profit executives. Most of all, the board of directors, because to be perfectly honest, many of the board members do not make what the executives make. It's a fact of life, but we have to deal with it. The salaries that we pay are vetted in a number of different ways. The Attorney General is interested in what we pay. The IRS has rules and regulations about what we pay and how we determine what the payment should be. We have an outside consultant that we hired specifically to be sure that we are within those guidelines. And we try very hard to make sure that we are paying a fair market rate to our executives, but not in excess of a fair market rate. But they are business decisions ultimately. Business decisions that the board is responsible to make. And we have to decide who should be running the organization on a day-to-day basis, what their qualifications should be, and how they should be compensated. And ultimately, you can agree or disagree, but they are business decisions, and we make them with a lot of deliberation, a lot of concern, and we do know that when those numbers become public, they will create concern within the community. But we do feel that we've maintained a good process for reviewing the salaries, and that we are fulfilling our fiduciary responsibility in establishing those salaries.
Does everybody of the executives who were cited in the paper today, do they all have service contracts for which the payment is mandated, or do you have the ability in tough financial times, as have many of us, certainly in my industry, freezing salaries, if not cutting salaries?
Well, in many cases, we have frozen salaries. I can't speak to the specifics of every single contract because I haven't reviewed them recently.
The way it was structured, and I'll echo what Cynthia has said, the board is very sensitive to the fair market value and the competitive nature of it, but it also very concerned also about the regulatory requirements, et cetera, and the reasonableness issue. I know that the dollars that have been quoted in the community appear very high. They've been vetted, and if we've worked with a consultant that gives us access to the market, and we're at or below what you see in most other hospitals of this size. And so from a competitive perspective, the board has approved it. So I think it's a matter to be sure that it passes the fairness test, and it does. It does also allow us to bring in and keep talent that's needed in this complex environment. To be honest with you, the dollars that you showed did reflect the bonuses paid based on the profit of '09. Since that time, and there have been no executive increases on the executive staff outside of that one-time adjustment.
So the public understands a bonus. It is not uncommon for a goal situation to be set up by which if you do make a profit, your executives get a bonus for making a profit. That is what you're talking about.
It's traditional and fairly common,
yeah.
But it's also pretty common that if there's an operating loss, that there would not be. And in this case, there's not been any bonuses paid for 10 or 11, and nor salary adjustments for the executive team.
The other piece that you're missing, and I think is important for particularly the public to know, is that the bonus schedule or calculation would involve profitability. But there would also be a component over quality of care and patient satisfaction. So it's not all about incentivizing the executives to make as much money at the expense of those other aspects that we really need to support as well. So it's all part of the package.
Again, I think I understood you, but so the public does. You're saying that among the reasons why an executive can get a bonus is if the assessment of the customer is, quote unquote, is so favorable that they've met goals that you as the board want, and thus they are rewarded.
They are incentivized to increase profitability, but they are also incentivized to maintain and improve patient care and patient satisfaction.
Tony, did you ask about HealthQuest when I wasn't paying attention? No. Word is coming to us a lot of things come to us. Among them, that HealthQuest is looking at you as a purchase or as to be absorbed into their organization. Is that something you can speak to?
Well, first of all, we're not for profit, so there's nothing for sale.
Okay.
So if there were any transaction, it would be some kind of an affiliation. But there are currently no conversations in that regard. I will not lie to you and say that we have not had conversations. There's been conversations off and on over, well, even prior to the affiliation, the Healthalliance affiliation coming on board. There's been, I mean, it's a natural situation. You're in a region, you're going to have conversations.
Well, when was the most recent conversation?
We probably had a conversation at a very high, casual level within the last 6 months. But there was we are both going through changes. There was nothing significant that came from that conversation, and there's no ongoing conversation.
6 months would if you go back in the calendar, that would be right around November when you had your retreat.
It was probably after the retreat, but I don't have my calendar with me, so I can't tell you. It was not related to specifically to the retreat or anything that we talked about at the retreat. You have conversations over a course of time. HealthQuest has a change in leadership. Their chair just changed, so it would be natural that there would be a meeting of chair to chair and that kind of conversation. And there's nothing that is on the horizon going forward with HealthQuest.
But it's not necessarily off the table either.
No, I'm not saying it would never happen. I've never, we are, if we've learned one thing from the affiliation, and those of us who've gone through it, is that it would be really stupid to say, I will never do this, or I will never do that. I mean, I never said 5 years ago that there will never be only one hospital in Kingston. You can't say that these days. You have to be open to possibilities. All I'm saying is that there is nothing on the table today, or I'm not anticipating anything anywhere in the near future. I have nothing in my radar screen that says there is a pending affiliation with HealthQuest. But will there be a conversation at some point? I'm happy to talk to them.
And I might add, one of the questions asked of me when I started was, once we bring the alliance together, can we be a standalone facility? And the answer is absolutely not. But it can take on a variety of different forms. It can be an affiliation, it can be an association, it can be a variety of things. And as the alliance has come together, we've received a lot of attention from hospitals north, south, and around the region of wanting to form some sort of an affiliation, meaning that sharing resources or working together to provide certain services. And we've been actively involved with HealthQuest. We have a partnership with them for our radiation therapy services, and have for years through Benedictine. There was a partnership with Vassar. Mm-hmm. We're working with them now on looking at cardiology and some of the other services. So it's a collegial discussion, certainly, and we will maintain that type of discussion going on, not only with HealthQuest, but also with other hospitals, simply to become part of something bigger and to be able to share resources, collaborate when it makes sense.
Joe, okay,
Two quick ones I really want to get in. Speaking of affiliation, I have a legal question about affiliation. And the community was told over and over again that the coming together of the two hospitals was not a merger, not a consolidation.
Correct.
It's an affiliation.
Correct.
So answer this question for me if you can. How can Healthalliance then make one of the hospitals disappear?
Healthalliance went through a process as we were developing as to how best to affiliate, primarily in this case, Kingston and Benedictine. Because Benedictine is a Catholic hospital, there could never be a full asset merger unless at that time we took on the Catholicity of Benedictine and gave up the secular nature of Kingston Hospital. Historically, that was the stumbling block for any kind of affiliation between the organizations. It was something that 50% of the community was against for both sides. I mean, it split the community. And so the affiliation was developed over a long period of time. It probably took a year to develop how we could come together and still not be a full asset merger. And there's a document, it's a public document called the Master Alignment Agreement. Thank you, I always want to say something else. The Master Alignment Agreement that lays out the governance of the entities. And in that agreement, after Foxhall, which is the ambulatory surgical center that was built to provide reproductive services. Once that facility came online and those procedures could be done at Foxhall and no longer had to be at Kingston, then what became Healthalliance Planning, which was a passive parent organization, became an active parent. And as an active parent, we have full governing responsibilities for all of the entities, with obviously local input, but we are the strong parent. We make most, if not all, of the decisions. We do have one aspect where we consult with the sisters about their board membership, but we do have active parent powers, and that was given to us and fully vetted through the Master Alignment Agreement. So that's how we can do it. Everyone, all the boards agreed, and all the boards signed off on the Master Alignment Agreement, including Benedictine, Kingston, Margaretville. Woodland Pond did not exist at that point. It was a decision, and it was a decision consciously made, because in order to get any of the economics, we needed to have a strong parent. And there are rules regarding how you can share information between two entities that have two different licenses. And in order to do that, we had to be a strong parent, and that was one of the pieces that brought the alliance together.
I guess I would characterize that as the clearest confirmation that I've ever heard from what became Healthalliance, that the concept of affiliation was to some extent a fiction.
That's untrue, because both sides, Kingston and Benedictine, made significant compromises in order to bring the alliance together. There were many people in this community who were adamantly opposed to being associated with any organization that did anything about reproductive health care. And there was another half of this community that was adamantly opposed that we would give up any authority in Kingston Hospital to be able to perform those services at the Kingston Hospital location. And so in order to be able to support the mission of both hospitals, and in order to be able to support those two aspects of the community, the alliance was the only way to bring the entity together. It was not a fiction. It was totally disclosed to everyone who had signing ability. The fact that we can make a decision to protect and continue health care in this community is hugely important to every patient who presents to either one of those hospitals. And if you think it was a fiction, it's unfortunate, but it wasn't. It was an action in order to protect and secure health care into the future, and it now allows us to make these very difficult and sometimes heartbreaking decisions in order to make sure that we continue to have an emergency room that can afford to service 50,000 people a year, that we can grow the services that this community needs. And if we didn't have the power and the authority to make those decisions, we could lock both doors and be without any hospital.
I'll try to make this one very quick. Assemblyman Cahill's made a point of the $48 million in affiliation aid. Are you confident that issue of that money is not going to get in the way of whatever decisions you have to make? In other words, are there requirements of having to repay any portion of that money?
Not to our knowledge.
Not
It was very clearly stated that we received just under 48 million, and I'm going to use approximation, but approximately half was used for debt reduction. which took some of the financial pressure, and then the other half, the other 24, was spread between or among 15 different capital projects. It was meant to be used to prepare both facilities for the distribution of services that had been defined as part of the Alliance planning. So it was tied very tightly to just capital and to accommodate the changes that had been defined. So, and there are no strings beyond that.
And there wasn't a penny of operations. It
No.
was all, we
Yeah.
can point out where every dollar got spent.
Yeah.
We'll take you on a tour sometime.
Okay, well, thank you all for coming in. I'm going to summarize my headlines. There are a lot of headlines, but for those who are viewing it on the live stream, we apologize again for the break in transmission. We continued, and maybe it wasn't a bait and switch way to get you all to buy the paper tomorrow, but we want you all to buy the paper tomorrow. But it seems to me what's of utmost importance immediately to the community, in my view, is that you're within basically a 90-day window to make a decision, and then once that 90-day is expired and you have made a decision, there is a considerable amount of time going forward before that decision can be implemented. So for those who are listening and will be reading, who fear that one of the hospitals is going to close but it's going to close very soon, the answer is it won't, if at all. So that's among the things that I think are important that people get out of this session. I'm not sure that's what you would agree with was the most important, but that was a headline to me. We thank you. I'm going to suggest to my editorial friends here that we take you up on your offer to come back, particularly right around that 90-day decision-making period, so we see where you're at that point. We'll try to get better technology by then, and that will be a good thing too. So I thank David Lundquist and Cynthia Lowe and Josh Ratner of the Healthalliance for coming in, and thank all of you on the live stream, and good afternoon. Thank you.